Hi, I'm Brad Case, Homes.com's chief residential economist, with one thing you should know about the homes market. This week, the question is whether the Federal Reserve's interest rate decision is likely to affect mortgage interest rates. The Fed doesn't directly control mortgage rates, but decisions by its Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC, can have an indirect effect on them. I noticed three things in this week's Fed announcement that lead me to think that we shouldn't expect mortgage interest rates to come down anytime soon. The first is simply that they elected to keep their policy rate, called the federal funds rate, unchanged. The second is more subtle. I thought I noticed more concern about inflation in this announcement than in previous announcements. And that could be because members of the committee may be becoming frustrated that inflation hasn't yet come down to the level of about 2% that they think is good enough for policy making purposes. But if that's the case, then the members of the committee may not be ready to reduce their policy rate even at future Fed meetings. The third thing I noticed was even more subtle. If the Fed thought that lower mortgage interest rates were a good idea, they could buy mortgage-backed securities, which would put downward pressure on mortgage interest rates. But they didn't do that. Instead, they announced that any available cash on their balance sheet should be used to buy U.S. Treasury bills. That tells me that maybe the members of the committee are concerned that anything they do that might boost the homes market might also cause inflation to flare up again. The Fed is always trying to strike the right balance between the risk of higher inflation and the risk of higher unemployment. And this week is no exception. But the bottom line is that the Fed's announcement tells me we don't have any reason to expect mortgage interest rates to be any lower anytime soon. I hope that's helpful. For Homes.com, I'm Brad Case.